Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, owner of Fearless Financial Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us all again on Fearless Females. I actually am so excited to have you hear about Carrie today. So we were chatting and she said something that really sat with me. She said, if you don't choose to take a risk, you're choosing to take the risk of staying where you're at. And this really hit me because, as you all know, I'm a financial advisor. And so the idea of risk is always there. I talk about it every meeting I have. I talk about it with new prospects. We talk about, risk, the risk of the market going up and down, the risk of just all sorts of risks. We're always managing risk. And it had never really occurred to me, I don't know why, but it had never really occurred to me that if I could choose two risks, I could choose the risk of speaking up, of standing out, of trying something new, or by default, I was choosing the risk of not doing that. So the real question isn't, should I be taking the risk? The real question is, which risk am I choosing? Am I choosing the risk of trying something new, speaking up, going after what I actually want? Or am I taking the risk of staying exactly where I am and hoping that that's enough? That's so interesting to frame it in that way. Like, this is a choice you're making. And I love that idea because it puts you in control. It puts you in the driver's seat, which I'm always talking about being in the driver's seat of your financial future. Well, this puts you in the driver's seat of your career, of your future, of your life. You're making a choice. And it's not a choice between, doing or not doing something. It's a choice between which risks feel like the ones I want to move towards and which ones feel like the ones I want to move away from. So I love the way that she framed this. I really hope you guys listen and take something out of this episode. And if you do, and if you know somebody else who maybe needs this message in their life, share it with them. Just go on to the podcast, subscribe, send a link, and share these messages, because what Carrie has to say will really change your life, and it may change somebody else's life too. So let's help the sisterhood out and share when we hear something that impacts us. So let's get started with Carrie. Good morning, Fearless Females. So today we have with us Carrie Hunter. She's CEO and founder of It's Not That Serious. And I had a chance just to chat with Carrie a little bit a couple weeks ago, and I really think you're going to enjoy this podcast. Thank you, Carrie, so much for coming on and just sharing your journey and your story with us.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to be here. I think what you're doing is really cool.
So my first question is always the same, and it's always my favorite. What is your favorite book?
I have thought about this deeply because, unlike you, I am not a huge reader. I always feel like I never have time, and now half the time I'm listening to them on through my Spotify. But to actually sit down with a book is a rarity in my life these days. But I recently read a book that resonated so much with me. It is not the deep, steamy romance novel or anything like that, or anything wild like that, but it's The Alchemist. I'm sure you've read it. But I feel like it is so in line with where I'm at in my life now. Have you ever read it before?
I actually haven't read The Alchemist.
Okay. So to give your reader or your listeners, an idea, readers, hello, to give your listeners an idea, it's a relatively short book. So, if you don't have time for reading massive novels, it's a great one to do in between on trips and things like that. But it's about pursuing your personal legend, and with the idea that, everyone has a unique purpose, and trusting the journey, even when it feels uncertain. And it's like following this young shepherd through his life in Spain, and then he goes to Egypt, and it's just following him on his journey, but it's really about following your intuition and perseverance, and that again about, trusting the journey, even when it's like not the perfect, doesn't make total sense. But it's just the treasure of finding. It's not about finding a specific treasure of gold or something. It's about finding what your purpose in life is and what your personal legend is. And so it really resonated with me. So it's not necessarily my favorite, but it's definitely top 10.
That sounds really interesting. Yeah, I kind of I need to read books that sort of bring me back to my why, right? Simon
Exactly.
Sinek, Start with Why, this kind of like, what is your purpose? And did you stray too far from it since you last read a book about it?
Yes,
And so,
exactly.
yeah, so I think I really would enjoy that, just to kind of get me back on my path and be like, remind me, because sometimes you do get caught up in what you're doing, and even though you're starting out on this straight journey towards your goal and your value and the best that you can be, you kind of take this windy route because you get distracted by other shiny things along the road. So thanks for sharing that. I think that's going to be great.
Yes.
And I like that it's short because my pile has gotten rather large.
I know. I was just looking through, because I knew you were going to ask me this question. I was looking through my books and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I am so behind. And I'm like, I have such a huge stack, and there's stacks everywhere. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But it really resonated with me. And also it's a fun story to read, or you can listen to it too. But it's a fun story to read because it takes you kind of on this fun little adventure with this underlying message. But it's not just like, then you do this, then you do that. It's just a fun story. And then it, circles back and reminds you that finding your purpose is really, really important.
I love that. So tell me a little bit about your journey, Carrie. Like, where did you get started? How did you figure out what you wanted to, how did you figure out your purpose in life? Like, what are you doing now? Kind of talk me through that.
Well, my journey has definitely not been a straight line. When I was young, I was a musician. I was a jazz study, and I actually went to college. I was a music major, and I ended up recording my own jazz album and touring and doing all of that wild, fun stuff. And I did that at the same time. I did it simultaneously as I was building a business career. And straight out of college, I started working in telecommunications and started doing sales and managing people. And I became a single mother when my daughter was 2. And so I had to I was doing these 2 careers like kind of side by side. And then I had to decide, okay, what am I doing with my life? What am I going to do? Am I going to be a struggling musician forever, or I'm going to go down this business path? So I chose business and ended up taking, like I said, a goofy way, doing all kinds of things, doing a lot of sales, doing a lot of management. But I ended up working my way into communications and then into technology, and that technology serving the construction industry. So I ended up for many, many years being an executive leader in the tech space, serving construction. So working with all men, and, I'd either be on a job site in steel-toed boots and hard hats, or I'd be in a suit talking to C-suite folks. And in that space, I also then spent a lot of time with executive women and leadership programs and networks. And then I also started doing a lot of mentoring. And within that construction space, I did a lot of stuff for women in construction, diversity in construction, and mental health. And over many years, I started feeling like there was a real need for a safe space for women where we can network, where we can connect, where we can rely on companies that are helpful and positive for women. So that's where it then brought me to It's Not That Serious, which I created that company. I got my LLC in March of 24. And then I actually launched in September of 25 while I was still in my executive role, VP role. And really the purpose of what we do is to connect, celebrate, and uplift women. And so I kind of did this wacky shift of, being in tech, being in construction, working with all men, to now literally being surrounded by women, working with women and helping uplift and celebrate women, and uplift and share women in business and their companies. So I kind of did a full 180, but there was no direct path for me to get there. And it's kind of some of my mentoring advice for younger folks is just like, there isn't one straight path to get where you're going. It can be a smorgasbord of different ways to get there.
Decisions. Yeah. So that it's interesting that you ended up in almost, construction and tech are like almost completely male dominated industries. And you were working with the C-suite executives with them, and a lot of communication pieces and stuff like that.
Yeah. So in my role, I had a couple roles that served that space. Both were VP roles. So I was in that high level executive role, and I loved it. Like, absolutely loved it, and was able to really connect people. But in that space, I then, like I said, I did a lot of work with women in construction and women in tech, and over time. Executive leaders that were women. And over time, I just felt like there were some things missing that we were all kind of looking for. And a lot of women felt really alone. And I just thought, it's just about connecting these people because they're not alone. And it's just a matter of putting the right people together. So it was really talking about personal legend is really a passion project to start with that turned into, as soon as I launched in September of 25, it was kind of like, all bets were off, and has been really well received. So that's been really lovely.
That's great. I'm a big fan of women's organizations and groups that empower women in all sorts of different spaces, and finance, being, again, more male than female, feels like a good space for that. But construction, airplane pilots, like I've engineers, I've like ran into so many professions that are just, a lot of times they're the only woman in the room a lot of times. And that's, you're right. Sometimes it feels a little bit lonely. It feels a little bit like, where are all my people that look like me?
Yes. And like I said, I did a total 180. So I went from literally being like the only woman in the room to now being fully surrounded by women. So it's been a really lovely shift. I loved the other way too. Like I said, I loved all my tech folks and tech guys and construction guys, but it definitely has been a significant shift, and it's been lovely. It's been really fun and rewarding watching women shine and watching women celebrate themselves and being able to add to that celebration.
Yeah. Carrie, as you look back along your journey, what is the best investment that you've made in yourself? Can you think of something that you've done that you're like, oh, I'm so glad I did that because it just really made all the difference in my career?
There's definitely been a handful of things, whether that was work I did with Cornell, whether that was like going back to it after many years, or whether it was particular leadership groups or courses that I took or invested time and money into. But I think the biggest thing, it wasn't really necessarily a investment, or as more of a way of life, is that the best investment and or thing I've been able to do throughout my career has been taking risks. And I think sometimes fear, speaking of fearless females, fear oftentimes stops us or blocks us from reaching our fullest potential, because we get too caught up in the what ifs or the I'm not good enoughs or that's too scary. And I think continuously throughout my career, being willing to step over that ledge and take those risks, I think that's some of it. It's not necessarily doesn't fit that question perfectly as far as best investment, but it's definitely been the best reminder for myself. The biggest rewards have come from the biggest risks that I've taken. And it's been a turning point or an aha moment for me in that it has kept me taking risks, not being afraid to make mistakes, because everybody's going to make mistakes. Absolutely everyone will screw up at some point. So why not do that in something that you have total passion for? Why not do that in something that is maybe scary, but more of your passion, as opposed to something that you just don't like or you hate, or that is making you stressed or anxious or sad? Why not go for it? So I think, definitely as a younger executive, kind of catching that understanding of taking these risks is worth it. It's getting out of our own way.
So this brings up a question for me where I'm always like, I agree. I think taking risk is important, and, it plays into the job that I do in financial advising quite a bit. But like, how do you know you're not taking stupid risks? Like, is there some magic formula for where you're like, okay, this is a calculated risk. It's a little scary. I'm a little worried, but you know what? This is a good risk for me to take, versus like, I'm stepping off the building. There's probably not a net down there and it's going to be bad. Like, is there a way to know?
I don't think there's ever a way to know no. I think that's part of the risk, is that you don't totally know. It could be amazing, it could be terrible. But I think if you do it smartly. So I do think that you can't just be willy-nilly taking risks without thinking things through. I think that, I oftentimes do a negative and a positive. Like, what is the worst thing that could happen? What are the benefits of taking this risk? What are the negatives? And really analyzing it that way before you go about it. I mean, I definitely do that. And, I always when I think of taking risks, I think of the movie Along Came Polly. And I think of like Jennifer Aniston and, oh gosh, who's the guy in that movie? Her husband or her boyfriend or whatever that is in that movie. He's like, he's a insurance risk analyst. So he never takes risks. And she's this like, cute yoga chick that has a pet parrot. And she's like, doesn't even think about anything. She's just like doing whatever. I'm somewhere in the middle.
Uh-huh.
Probably for my more risk averse friends, they might say, oh, she's way over on the Jennifer Aniston side. But I do have that in me, where I am analyzing what I'm doing. It's not like I'm just, if you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she did that. I probably had months of thinking it through, of weighing the benefits and the negatives before I took any action. But at the end of the day, again, it's about like, what's going to make me the happiest? What's going to be the best for me and my life and my family?
Yeah, that's really an important point too. Like the risk of staying where you're at. There's risk inherent in all the different decisions that you're making, and you are choosing a risk of staying where you're at, doing what you're doing. And it's the risk of, not realizing your dreams, or not finding out whether you could do that other thing. And I love the checklist idea. Like, I thought this through. I put my pluses, my minuses. Like, you had me at checklist.
That doesn't surprise me for you, for what you do for a living.
Yeah.
But, I think also the other thing is, when you make the checklist, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be 50 things on the positive side and 2 things on the negative side. They might be relatively similar. Maybe both sides have 10 things, or maybe one side has 11 and the other one has 8. And it's like not that big of a difference. I think the checklist makes you hammer out the things you're most afraid of happening and the best case scenarios. And then when you have that instinct inside of you, like when you're looking at this list of, let's say, an even list of 10 on each side, the things that light you up, the best case scenarios, are, I think, kind of they carry a little more weight for me. Now, I think for a lot of people, the worst case scenario may carry more weight for other people, because it's that fear, right? It's getting over that fear. It's getting over ourselves. But I think you take the list, you analyze it, you break it down and say, what's most important to me? And when you are actually looking at it on paper, sometimes the scary things become less scary, because you're like, but that really fun thing or that great positive
Yeah.
thing. Sounds
Yeah.
amazing.
What if you could? What if you could? What would that
What
be?
if you fly?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. What is the worst advice you've ever gotten, Carrie? Can you think of some like really bad advice? And did you take it or did you not take it? I'm always so curious about that part.
I rarely 100% take advice. So I absolutely consider advice and I absolutely use it to add to my negative and positive list and add to my analyzation of whether I'm going to do something.
Mm.
But I don't let it carry the weight of 100%. So, I may take people's advice and throw it into this bucket of like, here's the advice of all these people that they've given me. And it's going to carry, let's say, it's going to carry like a 30% weight. Like it does matter. And I do consider it, but it's not going to outweigh what's in my heart. So I think the worst advice that I ever got, I don't know that I ever got like just terrible advice, but I think oftentimes you get advice of people that are scared to move. They're scared to like make a scary move. And so their advice is like,
Oh,
do nothing. Their
yeah.
advice is like, go with a steady course, go with like the safe thing. And, I don't think it's bad advice necessarily, but I just don't 100% put all the weight into that. Like, again, I consider it, but I think, people that get stuck in life and end up miserable after 20 years of doing the same thing, they were afraid to move. They were afraid to take that step off the edge. And then now here they are after all of this time in this career, because we're all going to work unless you hit the jackpot, right? We're all going to be working for many years. So you might as well be doing something you love.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's so interesting and insightful just to think about. Again, we're kind of talking about the opportunities that you miss, right? If you don't choose growth, a little bit of risk, or that kind of opportunity to do something you haven't done before, you are on the opposite side. You're choosing to stay where you're at. You're choosing to continue the life that you have. And if that is making you 100% happy, go for it. But if you're choosing no instead of yes, there's got to be a really good reason for it. You have to be making a deliberate choice rather than just choosing the easier path. So I really like the way you frame that.
Right. I mean, it's cliche, but it's so true. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. It's 100% true. And I think of that often.
What about a do-over? Can you think of a situation where you would go back and you're like, oh, if I knew what I knew now, like, they're all learning experiences and we all go through them and therefore are good. But if you could take back, this is my genie wish, right? Every knowledge that you have right now and go back and do something differently. Can you think of a situation that would be and how you would change it?
I don't think I would change anything. Now, that doesn't mean that everything was fabulous. It doesn't mean I made every right decision. But in my mentorship with many women, I am often saying we don't necessarily learn when we're winning. When we're winning, everything's great. We learn when something's really hard or when we lose, when we fail. And so, again, it's not that every situation I ever had in my career was fabulous. I definitely made errors, mistakes, a ton. But you learn a lot about what you want and what you don't want. You learn about who you are and the strength that you have and the resilience that you have. So I'm not a person that lives in regrets. And that again doesn't mean that I don't make mistakes, but I feel like worry and regret are wasted emotions, as far as like, I can't change that I wore a pink shirt that day. I can't change, that's the shirt I wore, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I can't be worried about, oh, I'm going to wear that pink shirt. I wonder, I worry if it's going to fit or if it's going to look right or whatever. Worry is just a waste of an emotion to me. So it's like, regret and worry. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about things. I think about things, and I, put a lot of time thinking about how I think I want to do things, or how I think things should go. But so I don't live with a lot of regret, in that I look at each situation as, what did I learn from this? How can I be better next time? How can I make a better decision next time? I look at it more as an opportunity to learn, rather than linger on, oh gosh, I wish I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I have those for sure. Absolutely. Where I'm like, I'm not necessarily so grateful for them when I'm going through those learning situations.
Right.
But I find that the next time I come around, I just do things a little bit differently. I'm like, oh wait, I recognize this. I remember what I did last time. That wasn't such a good idea. I'm going to try this time. Do you think you have to go through those in order to learn, or do you think you can?
Absolutely. I heard somebody say once, I'm going to butcher it, so I'm not going to say who it was or the context, but it was roughly about, like, somebody said, do you think a trust fund kid has the same experience or knowledge that somebody that had to, like, work for it went through? And the answer is absolutely not. Now, they may have some insight into different things that person that had to work for it may not know until they're much older. But there is something about the learning process. Again, I don't think we're learning a lot when we're always succeeding. There are some really great things that happen when you're succeeding, but you learn the most and take away the most from situations when there's struggle, or when there's, like, ooh, that's a mistake I never want to make again. So I think you have to go through that tough stuff.
Man, I was hoping there was a shortcut.
I think we all are.
So if you could go back and high five yourself for a really great financial decision in the past, what would that be?
Well, when I was in my 20s, I was terrible with money. And my family didn't come from money, so it wasn't like I was getting all these nuggets of great financial bits of wisdom that I should do, or actions I should take in my 20s that were really, life changing. There was none of that happening. So the 20s for me were a massive learning curve of what not to do. I was in debt. I had collections. I settled debt that I found out later, like, I thought I was doing the right thing, and then it ended up killing my credit. And, just all those lessons that you don't learn until you go through them, that are not fun. But I think the best financial decision probably would be, for me, and this isn't the same for everybody, but buying my home or buying a home. I've owned more than one, but that was a really big step for me, because I feel like, again, while it's not the right fit for everybody, because everybody has their own path, their own story, and it makes sense for some people and it doesn't make sense for others, it helped me look at money differently, look at opportunity differently. It wasn't just about owning a home that I lived in. It was so much more than that, as far as, financial freedom and ability to do things differently. So I think that would probably be, I mean, I've invested in a lot of different things that were wonderful decisions, but I think that really was a cornerstone thing for me. It was such a big deal when it happened, that I think that probably was one of the best past decisions, I would say, financially. It kind of led me in a new direction.
Yeah, I like that. And it goes to the idea that you made a goal, you saved towards that goal, and it wasn't a short-term thing. It was something that you had to think long-term about and try and invest in. Then it does change the way that you look at decisions after that, because you're like, well, I have, the responsibility of a home, but also I like that you mentioned the financial freedom that it brought too. That's huge.
Yeah. I mean, and nobody thinks like, oh, I'm going to buy a home and it's going to give me, I would say maybe nobody out of the financial sector thinks I'm going to buy a home and it's going to it's going to bring me financial freedom. But there are just so many great things that come out of owning a home, assuming that you can handle the payment and that it's not a,
Mhm.
money pit. There's a lot of variables. Like I
Yeah,
said, it
right.
doesn't fit for everyone, but gosh, and it just makes you feel so proud of what you've done, what you've been able to accomplish. And there's just so many different reasons why I think that probably was one of the great past decisions.
So, what scared you the most when you kind of started down your journey? And maybe nothing scared you. Maybe you were fearless, but what
Ah,
what scared you as you started out? And does it still scare you, or did you learn how to deal with it? Just tell me about that.
I am definitely not fearless. I think that a lot of people might think that because I take a lot of scary risks in their eyes as far as what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to do things. But I think what scared me the most is that I initially starting my career, I didn't have a traditional path. I was a music major. I had an entertainment career, and then I was going to do this business thing. And then I started moving up the ladder and moving up the ladder. And then I'm in executive roles. And I wasn't the traditional, you know, I went to Harvard and then I did this and then I did that exactly how I was supposed to do on this straight line up. That was never my path. My path was like, ooh, I don't even know, pretzel situation. But I think that scared me the most as far as, you feel insecure about your background. You feel insecure about what you're bringing to the table. Everybody has those insecurities. Some of us have those louder than others. And I think that those fears, they didn't stop me. And sometimes they can stop us. Again, those fears stop us from doing things or moving forward, but they didn't stop me, but they made me like scrappier. They made me like, I need to prove myself. I'm going to show how amazing I am for this role. It was not only just for outsiders, but to prove it to myself too. And I think that still scares me. And it's still something that I work through. And it's still something that even after you go back through and you've got this, 25, however, who's counting?
Yeah.
You've got this long career and you've done amazing things and you've led companies and you've had, any 25-year-old coming out of college is going to be like, oh my gosh, your resume, blah, blah, blah. But I still have those fears and I still work through those because I mean, I am very confident in my abilities and I'm very confident in who I am. But I think that those fears never really go away because you're always trying to prove yourself. You're always trying to show folks what you're capable of and that they can trust you and believe in you. And so I don't think that fear ever goes away. So I think, yes, it does still scare me. And I think I've worked through it differently as I've gotten older and as I've gotten further along in my career. But I think if things aren't scaring you, then you should definitely should be switching things up because that means that you've gotten in a rut.
Mhm. Yeah, I tend to think that's true. I look at that, I look back on my life and I'm like, the times when I'm like, okay, I got this, everything, I know what I'm doing in every single situation, then they would usually hand me a new baby or a new job, one of the two. And I'd be like, oh, I don't got this. I was just joking. I have no idea what I'm doing and let me try
Right.
and learn really quick. But yeah, those I like the idea that you never stop being in that place where you are a little bit unsure of your ability, but you're willing to try. Like you're scared of it, but you're going to do it anyway. Fearless. That's my definition of fearless. What about as you kind of went through your career? I'm guessing since you worked a lot with being the only woman in the room, that there may have been some unique challenges that you faced as a woman as you were going through your path.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, in as you know, in the financial space, but in tech and in construction, it is male dominated. I mean, period. It's a lot of men. And I think sometimes when you're walking into those spaces as a woman, there are automatically challenges right out of the gate because you're shifting the energy in the space regardless of what you look like, regardless of ability, regardless of education, you are shifting the energy in that space. And so I think the unique challenge there is when you're the only woman in the room is being confident that you're there for a reason, that you're supposed to be there, and that you know what you're doing. I think so many times we question ourselves and we're like, you could be the most impressive person with the most impressive educational background, and you're walking into a space and you're questioning yourself and you're like, wait a minute, why am I doing that? So I think the challenges that I faced were really just, being confident in who I was and who I am in a room full of people that look differently than me and that may not have the same perspective as me and that may not have the same opinion as me, but that my energy, my perception of whatever item, my opinion is a positive for that room. So I think just reminding the unique challenges, it really reminding yourself that, in those unique spaces where you're the only one, reminding yourself that you're there for a reason and that you're supposed to be there and that this is going to help the group move forward in a better way. I don't know that everybody has the experience of walking into a room where you're the odd man out. And that does change how you come into a room. That does change how you deal with people. And there are a lot of people that have that perspective. So I think just reminding yourself that no matter what it is, it doesn't have to be men and women. There's a lot of different scenarios where you're the only one in the room and you see things differently than other people. So I think it's just remembering your value.
So how do you remind yourself of your value? Is there a trick that you use or something that you could consistently tell yourself as you're walking into that scary spot?
I think probably there's not I'm not tapping my head 3 times and doing a circle or there's not some mantra that I'm saying to myself. I think it's more of an unspoken, like, you've got this, and sometimes I talk to myself a lot. I'm one of those people. So I may be saying it out loud half the time, but just reminding myself, you've got this. They need you here. They need to hear what you have to say. What you have to say is important. And I think just constantly reassuring. I don't do any negative self-talk. And that took me many years to figure out and to master because it's really easy. Like, it's really, really easy. There is one little trick I will say, and I don't necessarily mean this like right before a big meeting, but it could still apply to the same thing, is, sometimes when I was younger, I might be like, oh gosh, Carrie, you look this way, or that, what's going on with that outfit? Or, it's just, we do it naturally to ourselves. And I consciously started asking myself, I think of my best girlfriends, my sister, my mom, my daughter, and I think of those people that I love so much. And I think, would you say that to her? No, you would never say that to her. So why are you saying it to yourself? And so I did that from the time I was, it took me a while, probably didn't start doing that until I was in my 30s, maybe in my late 20s. But so anytime I would have that thought of, ugh, ew, you look blah, or whatever, I would just say, like, would you say that to her? Meaning all those other women that are so important that I love so much. No, you wouldn't. So stop that. Instead, like, girl, you got this. You look good. Right. So I think it's definitely a conscious effort that you have to shift because it's so easy to just say all the negative things to ourselves.
Yeah. And it's easier to find the negative things about yourself than it is because you can see them so much better. And I love that. I really do like that idea of being nice to yourself, talking positively, and asking, hey, would I say that to someone? Would I say that to my daughter or my best friend, my mother? Would I make that kind of a remark? Then I shouldn't be making it about myself. I love that. That's great advice.
And the answer, just in case you're wondering, is unanimously no every time. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. Like, it's like, you would never. And so it's like a really easy thing to say to yourself to just get out of your own way. But it is a conscious thing. You have to know, number one, notice you're doing it, because sometimes we don't notice that we're doing it. And then it's like, man, it's like, so
Mhm.
like you said, it's just comes so easy to think of things that we don't love or like about ourselves.
Mhm.
And so you have to consciously make the shift.
Carrie, what is the thing that you are most proud of?
Oh gosh. I think I would probably say the thing I'm most proud of is the life that I've created up until this point. I have a beautiful daughter. I'm very proud of her. But I also have a wonderful life. And I also have a life that's filled with possibility and joy and hope. And I have a beautiful home and a lovely car. And, I have things I'm proud of, like physically, but outside of even just those, I have a really lovely life that I've been able to curate. And if you had looked at my life in the beginning when I was younger, you might have seen this bad thing that happened or that bad thing that happened. And you might go, oh, like, I don't know what's going to happen with her. But I've been able to create this wonderful life and beautiful family. And, I'm very proud of that. I think when we are able to always find the shiny pieces and the stars in our life, I think that's really the best. And I am able to do that because I just am very consciously always living in gratitude, even when I'm feeling really crummy and not so
Mhm.
positive. Nobody can be positive 24/7. But I just find, even if it's like, some days I'm grateful for really big things and, my house or my career or whatever. And sometimes it's like, man, I really love that my favorite coffee mug was clean today and I didn't have to wash it or whatever it is, just finding the little things. And I think when you live in that space, when you're constantly thinking about what you're grateful for and you're constantly thinking about that, it's really hard to go negative, and it's really hard not to be proud of the life you've created and what you've built.
That is such a powerful reminder to remind ourselves to find those gratitude. I do a gratitude journal, but I have to tell you, I am sporadic at it. Where like I'll go really strong for like a month, and I've got my three things that I'm grateful for, and then I'll forget for a month. And so I think that's really important to remember both the big and small things, and just be grateful for this life that we live, because there's we have so much and we're abundantly blessed. It just makes a difference to live with gratitude.
Yeah.
You can
Well,
see it.
yeah, and I also think that, like, this is part of getting older and finding these practices. It's not like I, like, hopped out of bed at 21 and was like, "Oh, I'm doing my gratitude journal and I'm this and that." No, like, it's over time you learn habits of making yourself more efficient at doing things that are positive. So, like, you do the gratitude journal, that's great. I think the key as we get older is like, okay, how can I make it more consistent? And how do I, when in the day is it going to be most effective for me? I have a practice of, in the morning, I don't do gratitude journal in the morning because I'm like, I'm not going to sit up. I know myself. I'm like, I'm not going to sit up and start writing a novel in the morning. But I do take, before I check my phone, before I get out of bed, when I am awake, once I wake up and I'm actually not groggy, I do take a certain amount of time. And this doesn't have to be long. Again, it has to fit into your life, however that is. If you got kids, it might be 30 seconds. If you've got like babies climbing into your bed, it might be 10 seconds. But I take a certain amount of time in the morning, several minutes, where I thinking about my day. I'm very grateful. I'm thinking about what I'm grateful for in my life. And I do a little meditation there, where I'm just kind of going through things in the morning. And then at night, I'm more of a night person. So I write at night. And in order to break the habit of what you're talking about, where I was like being inconsistent with it, and sometimes I'd write, sometimes I wouldn't, I have my journals on my nightstand and my pens. And if you came over to my house, you'd be like, why do you need so many pens? And I have a bunch of pens because I've been writing before and I've been really into it. And then I ran out of a pen, and then I'm like, oh, I'm not going to go downstairs and get a new pen. And so then it kind of like stopped me from doing it. And so I think the part of getting older is just like understanding where our blocks are and how to remove those so that we stay consistent and that we remain in habit. And also that that we remind ourselves that like, okay, I missed a month. Big deal. Today I started it again. So today I'm back in the habit, right? Like I think
Mhm.
sometimes we also let like, that month that went by that you didn't journal, like, oh, well, like now we started again, So
Yeah.
I think we let
Yeah.
sometimes that kind of stuff stop us from doing things also, you know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 I get that where you're like, well, I haven't done it, so I'm just not good at this. This is not my thing. As opposed to, well, I did it today. And so I'll do it tomorrow. And I am a person who writes in her gratitude journal every day. That is who I am. So some
Yeah.
days, yeah, I like that. That's a really good way of looking at things. And I love that. I love your attitude of gratitude. That really does. I think that it shines to people around you too. Like it makes the world a little bit better place because you're bringing that joy and gratitude and love to all those in your sphere and those people that you know, and that makes their day just a little bit brighter too.
No, thank you.
What about any advice for a young lady who's kind of just starting down the path that you're successful at? Is there something that you would tell that person, that young lady early on in her journey?
Absolutely. I would 100% definitely say to that young lady, I would say a couple things. One, I would say always remain curious. The smartest people that I've ever known and or been around were always the most curious, and they were never afraid to quote unquote ask a dumb question. They were always the ones asking the most questions. I think a lot of times we're just afraid to speak up because we don't want to sound dumb or look dumb or whatever. And I think remaining curious is the key to remaining the smartest, that you're not trying to be the smartest one in the room. I'm not suggesting that, but like maybe you are, but just remaining curious will allow you to elevate your knowledge about anything. And I think not being afraid to ask the questions in that moment, because again, the fear of like, ooh, I don't want to sound this way, or I don't want to look this way, or, it will prevent us from then gaining knowledge and then doing a better job and being better at whatever it is we're attempting to do. So I would say that remaining curious, and I would also say stopping negative self-talk. That the whole like, you have the thought and then you consciously change it. I wish I would have thought of that earlier in my lifetime, because I think it would have saved me a lot of heartache and a lot of wasted energy on negativity, like as far as just like feeling bad about myself when I was like, they always say like, they say that, oh, that funny saying, oh gosh, I'll probably butcher this one too, but I wish I was and I'm doing air quotes for anyone listening, I wish I was as fat as I was when I thought I was fat, or I wish I was as skinny as I was when I thought I was fat. Cause like, when you're young, when you're like 20, you're like, oh my gosh, I look terrible. I look fat. I look whatever. I look this, I look that. And then you look back 20 years later and you're like, oh my God, I look so good. And we just put these like weird in the moment, we put these weird parameters around ourselves. And it's again, that negative self-talk of, girl, you looked good. What were you saying to yourself? Right. So it's like, I think I would say the biggest two things would be remain curious, always ask the questions. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. That's how you will go the farthest. And also consciously stop the negative talk, self-talk. So the minute it comes into your head is the minute you change it with it. It's not like they're not going to come into your head. They are going to come into your head. But the minute that they do, change it. Would you say that to her? No, you wouldn't. So change it to something positive. And eventually, the magical thing is, eventually those things start going away. I don't think you ever get rid of them 100%, but if you're hearing them 90% of the time, by the time you get really good at that practice, you only hear them like maybe 5 or 10% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And what a relief that is, because that negative self-talk she can be a real, you know what.
Yeah, she can be mean. Yeah, exactly. Well, I thank you, Carrie, so much for spending some time with us today and just sharing your experience and your journey and your wisdom. We've really appreciated it. If I have a young lady who wants to ask you some questions, how does she get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Definitely any young ladies listening to this, young, medium, old, whatever, wherever you find yourself on the spectrum, go to itsnotthatserious.com. That is our website. That's my company. Again, we're a women-led lifestyle brand and storytelling platform built to uplift, connect, and celebrate women through intentional content and thoughtfully curated products. So you can go there, you can find all the stuff, you can find all the ways to lift yourself, but you can also contact me through that website. You can also reach out to me at Carrie, It's Not That Serious, Carrie at It's Not That Serious. But if you go to the website, if all you can remember is It's Not That Serious, you can get onto the website and you can connect with us and it'll shoot me an email directly to me. So would love to connect with as many women as possible and just love what you're doing here. I think it's so powerful, and it's just another example of how important it is for us women to come together and lift each other up. It's just so needed.
Oh, I agree. I love that, because that is exactly what we're trying to do, is lift all women and just empower them to show up, and they already are cool. We're just bringing a little bit of light to that. So thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Carrie, for your time today. I truly appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.